hello to anyone who might be connecting virtually, and welcome to those who are gathered with us in this space at the Joseph Martin Conference Center. My name is Nathan Uchtmann, and Nightingale is here together with me, and we will be presenting about Africa United for Planetary Health. Next slide, please.
So I'm Nightingale, like Nathan mentions, and I would like to, first of all, dedicate this work, whatever we're presenting, whatever we're sharing, to our children who are Fatili and Rahema, 11 and 8, that have been a huge inspiration to our work, and also to all of the children of our world, and really of all species.
And we also dedicate it to our specific ancestors, our parents, grandparents, relatives, and to all of our collective ancestors.
Oh, yes.
Okay. So just want to also express our sincere appreciation and gratitude. It's an honor to be together with you in this physical space, and then also, if anyone is there in cyberspace connecting and listening in, we are happy that you have taken the time to connect with us, and we look forward to sharing our ideas and experiences, but also to learning about you and the work that you do and ways that our interests align.
So the goals of this presentation today, to honor the beauty, spirit, resiliency, and energy of Africa, of Africans, and diverse African communities, including non-human species. Also, to link past, present, and future as frames to ground and guide our time together. And then we will share a brief backstory about the work that we do, including the coffee work, which we will talk about a little later.
We're also aiming to collectively cultivate and nurture seeds of hope and healing through our time together, and to build common ground so that this time is well spent for all of us. And ways that we are hoping to do that is to break through a little bit of the formalities or the figurative ice, if we can see about how to break that. And those of us who are in this space together, if you want to move to the front, if you want to move together, or feel free to remain physically distanced, that's all okay. But from our side, we really want to be very warm, welcoming, and accessible, so that we can also have hopeful and inspiring messages. We also want to have specific information and have it be action-oriented, so that it's clear who we are, what we're doing, and also if you have specific ways that your work or interests overlap, we can see about collaboration opportunities. Then we want to be maximally interactive and participatory, and one way that we hope to do that is to have a roughly 50-50 balance between information that we present from up here with discussion time, so that it's somehow balanced and democratic.
So we're going to approach it on a personalized, planetary storytelling way, looking at life on planet Earth, and looking at it on the scale of specific human beings, which we will start with who we are here today, and then look at that through our subjective lenses. So we will start with self-introductions. We will introduce ourselves first, and then we will take it from there. And because we are a small enough gathering, we will introduce ourselves, like all of us.
Or invite. Okay.
No pressure. Yeah.
So you first.
So I am Nightingale Wakigera, and I sometimes will share his name, Uchtmann, because we are a family. And I am a mother of 2 children, like I referenced earlier, and also a registered nurse, and also a student. I am taking a master's in One Health. And so the way I see myself is as just a community member on our planet, and more I feel that my goal is to work with everyone, but I feel a very strong pull towards working with children, maybe thanks to the 2 that we're raising, but also a bigger community that we're connected to of children, to see how I can be a good ancestor. Susan has talked about that in her presentations, and also to work with our children, our 2 and other children in our communities, to see how they can in turn be good
Stewards.
no, not stewards. The opposite of ancestor is what?
Descendants.
Descendants, yes. How they can be good descendants and working, and then moving it forward to future generations. So that's how I see myself.
I'm Nathan Uchtmann, and I'm an internal medicine and pediatric physician. That's what I do to earn a paycheck currently. Professionally, I'm also a New York lawyer, and I did a global health fellowship and did a master's in environmental sciences. So really have a background of jumping between different disciplines and silos. So the planetary health space feels right at home for me. So I'm also a father, as Nightingale shared, to Haley and Nehema. I'm a son to my parents. I'm a family member and try to be a good friend and community member as much as possible to people from different backgrounds, and to try and especially help people in this age or time where there's so much isolation and division and separation, to really be open with who I am, how I became who I am at this point in time, who I hope to be, and to try and emphasize how much I am a part of nature and a planetary citizen or steward, and also a life form is a core identity that I relate to, because to me that connects me to the other members in the circle of life. So that's just a little bit about who we are, and as we said, we would like to promote as much connection and familiarity in our small space together. So no pressure, but if we could maybe go around the room, and if you could share about yourself, and if you're not comfortable, totally fine, you can just say pass. So
I will add 2 more things. That part of our story, or part of my story, is also that I was born and raised in Kenya, and so that's where I have spent most of my life. More of my life in the past few years has been spent within the US, but that's also part of my story. And this little guy here is the way that our children could make it to this presentation. So I had forgotten to bring her out, and I had promised that we would make sure that they featured. So
the name, or
no, I don't remember the name, but yeah.
our kids would definitely know.
Yes. So we will hand it over to you. Anyone who would like to come in, and feel free to share about yourselves as much as you would like.
Happy to start. My name is Joanna Canedo. I'm originally from Brazil, but I've been in the US for 6 years, and I work for an international organization called Pathfinder International, which is dedicated to sexual and reproductive health and rights. And most of the work of this organization is that in 17 countries in Africa and Southeast Asia. And so we work in Kenya, for instance, and my colleague that was just having a meeting with her from Kenya directly. And we like to work with young people and trying to bring communities together and primary health care to sexual and reproductive health to primary care through community health.
Thank you.
My name is Nina Chandler. I am a recent graduate of the University of Vermont. There I studied community and international development and health and society. So my passions span all of that, and this is super relevant. I'm figuring out what I want to do next. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So hi everyone, I'm Pearl. I think I start. So I'm originally from the Philippines, and but just finished my PhD in epidemiology in France, and there I also co-founded a Planet of Young Professionals. And now I'm a recent postdoc at UCSF, and so planetary health has been a passion of mine since my master's program. So that's why in 2020 I applied for Planetary Health Alliance Ambassador program. So I'm happy to see everybody in person in this meeting.
Hi everyone, my name is Julie Andre. I'm a PhD candidate at Pasig Convent University. I'm originally from the Philippines, but I'm based in Scotland now for almost 6 years. So my PhD is about sustainable healthcare, basically trying to reduce country to contribution, basic contribution to mental health, just connecting people to nature. So most of my work, nature and health, has been fueled by my interest in planetary health, but also my childhood experience living in the Philippines, which is one of the most at-risk countries to climate change. We have Chinese typhoons every day. So in the Philippines, we grew up with the typhoons that were coming. So it's a country where you can see people swimming in floodwaters just to survive and evacuate from their very vulnerable houses. So in the Philippines, we also co-founded the 2030 Person Program to talk about sustainable goals to young people, but yeah, that's basically what I'm into.
Hi everyone, my name is Hugh. I'm a medical student here, a third year med student, planning to go into med peds actually, with the hope of having a career at the intersection of climate change and global health. Focus on there.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jo. I'm a mother of two teenagers. I'm also a health physician. I used to be a family physician. I worked abroad, especially in Cameroon, Ethiopia, Ghana. But quite fond of African countries and people. I am in the indigenous region of northern Quebec for quite a few years, and now I'm working at the provincial level in Quebec on climate change and health issues, and trying to look at how so there's a working group within the International Association of National Public Health Institutes looking at how to translate planetary health into actionable measures. So that's one of my goals
Oh, thank you.
My name is Susan Prescott. I'm originally from Australia, but I've been living here in the New York area for about 6 years, married a New Yorker. I'm a pediatrician and also an immunologist. I've worked in clinics for about 30 years, but now I'm sort of moving more into advocacy. I've been running a network called Planetary for about 10 years, and we're now based at the Nova Institute in Baltimore, so it's a very exciting time for us. Like many of you, I'm interested in working across different traditional siloed areas and really thinking about how we can integrate all of the challenges, have really broad discourse, and so the work that I'm doing is really about bringing people together from very different fields, not just in the medical health areas, but in the environmental sciences, economic challenges, social challenges, really the whole thing. So it's really wonderful to be here, and it's wonderful to have friends in Africa. And the network that I'm sort of trying to lead this is really about breaking down all of those barriers and thinking about how we live on this planet in new ways. So thank you.
Thank you. So Susan, I hope I don't put you too much on the spotlight, but we do know Susan virtually a little bit, and so we haven't said this before, but you are an auntie to our children because of the work that happens, and even to the Kenyan children who have worked directly and indirectly with you. And so, an Australian American auntie to those children. Yeah.
So thank you all for introducing yourselves, and I want to at least invite our tech team, if you want to say your names or want to say hello or not, just want to be
with
sure
no
you
pressure.
don't feel that you're excluded. You're very much welcome.
Thank you.
And I don't know if on the tech side you're able to see if anyone is in the Zoom room or.
There's one person, they were attempting to speak earlier, but I don't think that they realized they were unmuted. I've asked them to unmute. Oh, they're unmuted. So Zainab, do you want to introduce yourself? Zainab, would you like to introduce yourself? I don't know that they
कैमरा बंद हो गया चलन रही आवाज बड़ी ना स्लो है बंद ही हो गई चलन रही मैंने मैसेज देखिया मैं काट देता
Okay. So just to say a little bit more about, so we also wanted to say a little bit more about our children and their involvement in planetary health. Rahema is right now she identifies as a female, and she is 8 years old. And we didn't ask her before we put this down because we finalized it last night. But she is an animal lover, an artist, and yeah. And so she was the drive behind this, and the brothers supported it, sending this little guy, and has been inspired by a lot of art. But right now she is very focused on doing predator art, horses, and just thinks that if she's not going to be a game reserve person, she is going to be a vet. So we're going to see, but that's her, and she's also the one who collects garbage along the way as we walk and wonder why people trash our planet.
So Fatili is her 11-year-old brother, and he is very much into ancient ways and to try and be as self-sufficient as possible. So he read a book, I guess a little over a year ago, called My Side of the Mountain, about a boy who was able, even at a young age, to go and live on his own in probably the Catskill Mountains of New York State. And right now we're reading a pretty well-known book called Hatchet, which was very informative and influential for me whenever I was about his age, just thinking about what it would be like to have to go back to the way that all of our ancestors used to live not that long ago, in needing to actually come up with what you need to survive. So he's an aspiring survivalist, and then also, what was the other? And blending ancient and modern ways. So they're together with us in spirits and very much a part of our inspiration. So next we will expand the scope. And again, we're working with the past, present, and future, the different time frames. So continuing with looking back into our collective past. And this time talking about species-wide planetary storytelling with life on planet Earth at the scale of humankind, or Homo sapiens, through the lens of deep time. And the reason that we wanted to emphasize some about how our ancestors used to live and the role that oral languages and storytelling played in helping us to pass down this place-based, very specific knowledge about how to survive, how to thrive, how to care for your community members. So we have a very strong commitment to grounding our work.
आवाज नहीं आंडी यार अच्छा भी आ गई पता नहीं की रूम तो कहीं मां की आवाज बंद हो गया शायद
So sorry for that small break or interruption. Okay.
Hi guys, we're in really good area.
फोन आ गए ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹ ਫੋਨ ਦੀ ਖੈਰ ਬੋਲ ਉਹ ਯਾਰ ਆਵਾਜ਼ ਵੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਆਣੀ ਪਹਿਲੇ ਆਵਾਜ਼ ਸਹੀ ਕਰ ਕੇ ਆਵਾਜ਼ ਦੀ ਕੰਮ ਕੀ ਕਰ ਯਾਰ ਬੰਦ ਕਰ ਆਵਾਜ਼ ਆ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ
Thank you. So just to build on that point about planetary health with various definitions by different groups, in vivo, Planetary Health Alliance, it is in the health space a relatively new and emerging frame or community, has a lot of similarities with One Health, global health, climate and health, traditional ecological knowledge, and all of these holistic health framings are explicit about the need to look at environmental metrics or influences or priorities. And so our position and perspective is very much that while this may be a very important and emergent frame, it by no means is something that has just recently been invented. This is actually something that our collective ancestors and in the present day indigenous people and indigenous communities never actually bought into the false perspective that people are separate from nature and that health and environment can be conveniently separated for the benefits of whatever organization or funding agency or community is trying to look at specifically. So I want to also reference Susan Prescott and in vivo planetary health. There's a 2019 paper, Canmore Declaration, and in that declaration about principles of planetary health, this connection to indigenous knowledge, indigenous wisdom, indigenous ways is made very specifically, referencing that planetary health has that as its authentic roots. So just tying that to what we're discussing here today, that this is very much something which we see in the modern day important to be humble and to be honest and to take a broad perspective about what we're doing in the present and looking forward to the future. So this is also coupled with the recognition about the universality of latent indigenous elements whenever we look at a sufficiently long time scale and look into our ethnic or cultural or linguistic roots. Each of us can trace back over the span of decades or millennia or centuries to whenever our ancestors did live in this way, where they were very much a part of nature. So we want to just call that out and reference that we think it's important to give credit where it is due. And whenever we look at humanity in the scale of deep time, this does give us a shared collective heritage with a hopeful framing that we can build on and see that we all come from the earth, we all come from the stars, and we all share one planetary home. So just circling back to the storytelling reference, I don't know if anyone has come across a book called The Storytelling Animal, which is really about how evolutionarily our brains were formed and shaped by stories. And this is really interesting looking back to oral traditions and the way that we used to live and how it shaped so much of our habits and instincts and ways of relating. So this is important for us to have hopeful narratives as we think about trying to leave the world in a livable manner, ideally better than we found it, for the children who are so much a part of our day-to-day lives and what we are trying to do together.
So on that, I also do want to add that one of the things we're really working on, at least on a very small scale, but still hoping to make it, to share with others and amplify it, is looking at languages specifically and just how much language, where you come from, those, it can be an indigenous language, or it can even be a family language where you pass on through stories, whether it's correcting through stories or passing knowledge through stories and using language that is known to that community, to that family, is so important. It's very good that we have the written, but the oral is also so important, and in the form of stories. Looking at how we connect, how we relate, how relaxed we are, and how we remember. So looking to even hear more from you guys about that aspect and how it connects you to the people you are very connected to, and how you want to pass the knowledge that you have acquired and want to leave behind when you eventually, and we all eventually, do become ancestors.
And just to do a brief interjection talking about power dynamics or power relationships, we have the discussion or question and answer kind of clumped at the end, at least in the presentation, but do want to make clear that if you have something you'd like to share, something that's not clear, or something that you'd like to do a deeper dive into as we go through the discussion, please feel free to raise your hands or to just come in so that this is more of a collective engagement and interactive.
So linking the me and the we through an Africa-focused lens, and what Africa means to me and what it means to all of us. and also why we're passionate about focusing our work here. And just speaking from my perspective, which I have already shared before, is that it's still very much home. That a lot of the fond memories that come, I do have enough fond memories for myself as an adult, but there are so many childhood fond memories that in a lot of ways, when I look back, are also very much intertwined with a lot of beautiful imagination. So like I have 3 siblings, and whenever we look back at our past, so one of the small examples I can give is going to fetch water far from home barefoot and conversing with my siblings. We're like, I miss that. I want to go back to that. At that time, we wanted a tap, like that's what we wanted, tap water. But looking back, what that brings is connectedness, family, and I think carefree joy and mood. And it's just a carefree moment in life where, I don't know, there's a little bit of disconnect for the adults between now, at least for me, between now and then as a child. And so for me, it's home, and it's also the beauty of childhood, and that's kind of what I look to connect for me and the children and the communities that I relate with, and also looking at it from, I think, historically speaking, that it is also quite likely home for all of us. It's a place where we seem to have kind of started as the humans, we can kind of say.
So some more about my Africa story, where it sort of accelerated or became a lot more meaningful, was whenever I went to Kenya for the first time after my undergraduate degree. So before I went into graduate school, I went to Kenya as a volunteer for 1 year and ended up going to a hospital where I met Nurse Nightingale, and that's where our path linked up after several years of being friends. But the way that I describe myself in an open or a setting where this level of vulnerability is less likely to be either twisted or criticized or confused, is to say that to me, I do call myself an American African and also an African American, because I was born in the United States and then went to Africa. And even before I married Nightingale and was welcomed into her family and her tribal community and to the nation of Kenya, which we're working on my citizenship status in Kenya. But it's more of a feeling of really being embraced by, we can call it a communitarian culture, or very different and distinct and in a lot of ways refreshing, coming from a background in the United States where we're a lot more about pull yourself up by your bootstraps or figure it out on your own because we're not going to help you out as your family or community. So that feeling was very powerful to me, to go to a place where people were so welcoming and so clear about who they were and what it meant to be a person as a member of a community. So then the African American is, if we look back to the ancestral roots that Nightingale referenced about human history and where Homo sapiens evolved, all of us using that deep time perspective can trace our roots back to Africa. And I know that's very different from the common use of terminology, but again, that's what's in a lot of ways the two of us, and looking at our children who are a blend and a mix with their identities between Kenya and the United States or America and Africa, So as adults who somehow came together to put them on that pathway, it's very important for us to try and think about how we can look to our past and our roots and find ways that we can celebrate our diversity instead of trying to have sort of a one-upsmanship where it's about, you know, my party or my country or whatever narrower identity, in a way that to me and to us is very much something which we should probably try and leave behind, because the idea of being a planetary citizen seems to be much more important in this modern moment, or this moment in history, where we are seeing a lot of planetary crises where human artificial borders don't neatly separate things like climate change or biodiversity loss or poverty, war, things of that nature. So these are just a few points about our roots and our connection and our interest in Africa. And the last point we want to make is just talking about how Africa is extremely well placed for translational planetary health, and using a sister or relative framing with One Health. There's an interesting article talking about how Africa is a leader in the One Health space because of the way that Africans live, and not to overgeneralize and say that all Africans live the same, but generally many Africans still do have, even if they've moved to the city, they retain that connection to specific places, villages, communities, where animals are very much a part of your home or your community. And so this idea about One Health linking human, animal, and environmental health, and then at scale looking at planetary health, this is something which is somehow a lot easier for Africans of whatever background to get it. And the way that we see it, it's a way to really turn this negative, narrow framing about Africa as a poor, impoverished place with so many needs, where people from rich economic countries need to go there, solve their problems, give them our solutions. In fact, the way we see it is that it's not nearly that negative or that simple, but in fact, the way that many Africans live is something that if we shine a light and showcase these solutions, it can actually help people in economically more rich or developed countries to see how we need to take some steps back and learn from people who haven't, again, bought into this negative, narrow, divisive framing. So here we have, I believe, a link where we wanted to have a little break and celebrate art and music with an Africa focus. So there are great songs about Africa that really showcase that connection to place. And this particular song is by a reggae artist named Peter Tosh, and it's called Mama Africa. So we just want to play a little music. And
just before playing the music, I also just wanted to add the aspect of sharing. So it's kind of looking at Africa is one of the places, not the only, but one of the places that still kind of holds on to that old knowledge. And part of it is the language, I think, really helps. The different languages helps hold on to those old ways of knowing, and just seeing how we can blend the old and the new in a peaceful and harmonious ways. And in a lot of ways, that's what we all in the room represent, is kind of that middle place, feel like it.
And maybe I can try and play from here. It'll be quieter, but.
think the only thing I'll do like a teacher is stand up. Like I think that's the best. But then anything else.
Maybe we could all hold hands. Whew. Yes. Thank you all for humoring us.
Okay, so we will talk a little bit about our story, our brief backstory about a coffee, which is the organization or in the making that brings us here in this space today. It is called a coffee, and it stands for Africa Community of Planetary Partners for Health and Environment. And a coffee story begins with FAM 2021, which is when we started. So that was the second virtual meeting. I think the first virtual meeting for FAM because of COVID. And so it was free. And so a group of us started to see how we could have as much African presence in that space as possible. And so that was how a coffee was born. That after we did that get together, the team felt that we needed to talk more, to do more, to be more involved. And so right now, a coffee is trying to figure out about registration and looking at registering in Kenya so that it can be Africa placed, Africa grounded, even though it's planetary partners. So really looking to be connected and working to be connected globally. We do have the executive team with representatives from Kenya. Excuse me. It's the joy. So Kenya, me, United States, and then Brazil with Vanessa And then we have Mona, who's in Egypt, and then Walia, who's in South Africa. And so that's the team that's reading a copy.
So just a little bit more about our name and the Planetary partner idea. That was intentional, that we didn't really want to only pick planetary health, just because as it is in some places, there is a little bit of territorial nature about One Health and planetary health in particular. And just to give an anecdote about the pediatric realm, I connected with a friend and colleague from Florida who is a leader of an international pediatric society because one of my pediatric colleagues in California was a member of a listserv, or actually a group within the American Academy of Pediatrics. At that point in time, probably 4 or so, maybe 5 years ago, it was called the Section on International Health. So they were looking at renaming, and this pediatrician from Florida named Jeffrey Goldhagen proposed planetary health being used instead of global health. But there was a lot of pushback with some people really criticizing or questioning what planetary health actually meant, because to them it seemed like that meant maybe Saturn or Jupiter or floating out in the planetary realm. And the sense was global health is very fine and sufficient. So just to emphasize that terminology does matter a lot. And so at least in the context of our organization and looking at Africa or Global South, or a bottom-up approach with trying to use as clear and simple and accessible language as possible, we wanted to talk about planetary partners that would look at holistic health framings that do recognize the connection between health and environment, and really try and link up with all people who have that recognition. And then for arguably complementary framings like global health, community health, public health, maternal child health, etc., that do have that social community elements but are not commonly explicit about the connection to environment, seeing that those also are prospective partners if we're able to do outreach to them. So again, referencing the importance of language, when we talked about what our vision was as leaders of this voluntary new organization in the making, we said we wanted to somehow be clear about the importance of not just sticking within English, but using as many African references and words as possible. So we thought that hasa, which is a Swahili word
for especially.
So we say that HASA stands for a healthy and sustainable Africa for all. So that's the vision that we're aiming for. And then the mission also tried to make it somehow easier to remember with the abbreviation of HOPE Reborn, standing for healing ourselves and planet Earth by reuniting with our roots in nature. So potentially a little bit complex with what's being discussed there, but ultimately it's that indigeneity idea that we are connected to nature, even if many times we don't understand or recognize that connection. So we want to go beyond even talking about connecting to nature, and instead to talk about reuniting with nature, because at one point we were much more united. And so trying to circle back to a much more harmonious state of balance and sustainability, to reunite as people with our roots in nature, and just emphasizing again the importance of breaking the ice or relating as much as possible in free-flowing fun ways like dancing. Another opportunity is to just get outside and to feel the wind, hear the birds, maybe go barefoot. And there's amazing, interesting work in research that kind of quantifies the neural pathways and the hormones and the compounds that are released, which make us a lot more empathetic and compassionate whenever we are in nature. So that's probably it for now about Akofi. For the backstory. And so this is a slide that shows a few of our executive team members' pictures that Nightingale already ran through. And we do have a model for action teams to help people to connect with others who share similar interests. So the Mentoring Research Network is led by Mona, who is a professor at Cairo University, a parasitologist, teaching medical students, and a very passionate planetary health researcher and advocate. And then the arts, indigenous, and culture team, Walia and Vanessa, are very interested in that approach as another action team. So we do have another video that we would like to share. It's the next slide, and maybe you can just give an overview about that.
So that video talks about work that has been done in Kenya. And so Nathan and I were privileged to travel back after a while to Kenya. And we worked with the Kenya Forest organization in Kenya to work together with schools, primary schools and secondary school children and their teachers or their patrons. They mostly were environmental clubs or children interested a lot in the environment. And so it was talking about our stewardship as humans and how we're connected to the environment, and also looking at trees specifically, and that's why we were indigenous trees actually specifically. And so again, indigeneity, language featured a lot. And actually, so this video is was taken by one of the TV stations, and it's one of the languages, which is my indigenous language, so which is my language actually. So we will say a little bit about it. There will be some in English, but a lot of the rest of it will be in Kikuyu, which is that language. Kikuyu, yeah. So let's see if.
So I think that